my all-time favorite author didn't write scary, dark horror stories that came with lists of trigger warnings and featured all sorts of upsetting abuse and splatter gore and the stuff that I talk about mostly on this channel. He actually wrote completely different kinds of novels that literary experts have referred to as serio comedies. Now, it's July, and July happens to be my birthday month, so as a birthday gift to myself, I have decided to talk to you guys about my all-time favorite author, Tom Robbins. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on who he was, but I'm mostly going to talk about his books. He published 9 novels, I believe it is, a collection of essays, a autobiography, and a children's book for adults. So he wasn't the most prolific writer like Stephen King, who can just, write and write and write and produce, but it was one of the aspects that are well known about him is that he would spend an inordinate amount of time making sure that he was using the right word in the right place in each sentence. And to be completely honest with you, I mean, it doesn't read like it was difficult, but there are definitely times when I have read a passage and just been like, oh, how cool was it when that came out of his hands? Like, that must have just been amazing. And I've since discovered that, he spent, I mean, some of it I'm sure just came out, but he also painstakingly thought about each and every syllable, it seems. Anyway, I'm already on a tangent because I'm talking about my favorite author. Let me introduce myself. Hi, my name is Elizabeth. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really glad you're here because today I'm going to talk about my all-time favorite author, Tom Robbins. And there are no trigger warnings needed at all. It's just really kind of refreshing and nice. So if you're interested, join me for the ride. Thomas Eugene Robbins was born July 22nd, 1932 in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. The Robbins family lived in Blowing Rock before moving to Warsaw, Virginia, when the author was still quite young. In adulthood, Robbins described himself as being a hillbilly. Robbins attended the Warsaw High School. He was graduated class of 1949 and went to Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia, where he won the Senior Essay Medal. The next year, he enrolled at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia to major in journalism, but he left before the end of his sophomore year after being disciplined by his fraternity for bad behavior and failing to earn a letter in basketball. In 1953, he enlisted in the U.S. Air Force after receiving his draft notice, spending a year as a meteorologist in Korea, followed by 2 years in the Special Weather Intelligence Unit of the Strategic Air Command in Nebraska. He was discharged in 1957 and returned to Richmond, Virginia, where his poetry readings at the Rhinoceros Coffee House gained him a reputation in the local bohemian scene. He got his degree in journalism and worked in the field for the next decade. Then in the late 60s, he began writing his first novel, Another Roadside Attraction. He would go on to publish 9 novels, 1 novella, a collection of essays, and a sort of autobiography. Robbins lived in La Corna, Washington, which I believe is near Seattle. A lot of his stories took place there. And he died there on February 9th, 2025, at the age of 92. May his memory be a blessing. Okay, so let's start with his published works. First of all, he published works from 1971 to 2003. The novels are called Another Roadside Attraction, Still Life with Woodpecker, Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, Jitterbug Perfume, Skinny Legs and All, Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas, Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates, Villa Incognito, a children's book for adults called B is for Beer, a collection of articles and essays called Wild Ducks Flying Backwards, and an autobiography entitled Tibetan Peach Pie. And like I said in the intro, his style of writing is considered a serio-comedy. Now, I'm going to tell you how I describe his works, and I'm going to do far, far more words. Okay. So he uses language, first of all, in the most delicious way. He weaves an elaborate tale that begins with what seems like these loose strands of yarn, like only for the story to somehow come together into this beautiful tapestry. He takes on these big, important, heavy ideas. He discusses human limitations, social influences, the problem with government and religion, and how the two are intertwined, and how many, many other big, important issues affect humanity, but he never, ever actually takes himself seriously. That's where the comedy and serio-comedy comes from. The amount of times I have shocked myself by audibly guffawing while reading his stories is too vast to count. I mean, truly, I can remember so many times people saying to me, "What are you reading that you're laughing like that?" It's Tom Robbins. Robbins definitely has a style that is all his own. And I do know some people who just cannot get into his brand of storytelling, which is why we have so many different storytellers in our world, right? So if you can't get into his brand of storytelling, don't give yourself a hard time. It can be sort of nuanced and a little out there sometimes. Anyway, so, just don't worry about it if his style isn't for you. But I always suggest that everyone begin with, this is not his first book, I believe it's his second, Still Life with Woodpecker. Now, if you are in my generation by any chance, you probably recognize this book. It was, before there was viral, it was pretty famous. It was described as a sort of love story that takes place inside a pack of Camel cigarettes. It tries to explain the difference between outlaws and criminals, and it deals with the problem of redheads. Yeah, that should give you an idea of the kinds of stories that Tom Robbins tells. Now, so in this particular novel, the strings of this tale are much clearer, earlier, and can sometimes be more easily consumed. So I usually tell people start with this one. It's the easiest one to get. And if you can read this one, then you can probably handle the others. But if you can't handle this one, then probably it's just not for you. Anyway, once you get like a new writer sort of gets into his style with this book, the more complicated books can become much more accessible. At least that's my experience with suggesting many, many people read his stuff. And this book is, I adore the way this book begins. The opening line is, "If this typewriter can't do it, then fuck it. It can't be done." The very first book that he ever published was another roadside attraction. The plot of this one is that Jesus has been found and he's dead. He's very dead, actually. And you can visit him, right? If you visit the right roadside attraction, you can see his dead body. It's not rotted or anything, but he's definitely dead. Don't ask me what Robbins is trying to say with that. That is for a book group to discuss. All the time, Robbins' voice can really be heard very clearly in his books. This one, though, the narrator is actually a character. He is upstairs in the home next to the roadside attraction writing this book. So he'll say things like downstairs, which is just, it drops you into the story so effortlessly that it totally tickled me. Anyway, it's wonderful. Now I will warn you that he had not gotten his love of details quite under control yet. I believe there is 4 or 5 pages that are just kinds of mushrooms. I think it's just a list of kinds of mushrooms. So this is not where I suggest people start. It's not his easiest one to get through. It's in many ways it's one of the hardest ones to get through, and I think he just hadn't quite been reined in yet. But Another Roadside Attraction was his very first, and then there was Still Life with Woodpecker, which I've already described. I do want to say, though, before I move on to the next one, that this is not a pro-smoking book. This is not a book that talks about smoking so much. It's really what the pack of cigarettes represents. Actually, the people who have the pack of cigarettes don't smoke. So I know when people see like that it looks like a pack of Camel cigarettes, that maybe it's somehow smoking related, but it's not at all. And for those of you who are in a younger generation, I'm not so sure any of you are watching me, but the Camel pack of cigarettes was ubiquitous. I mean, it was everywhere. It was, you couldn't exist in the world in the 70s and 80s and not know who Joe Camel was or who the Marlboro Man was. It was just a part of our zeitgeist. So just want to make sure you know that that's not a pro-smoking book. Anyway, now my all-time favorite book by Tom Robbins is Jitterbug Perfume. Now this is probably due to the fact that I absolutely love a saga, an epic, something that, you know, starts way back when and goes on for thousands of years. And that works out well with this because this book begins in about 700 something AD and it concludes tonight, 6 p.m. Paris time. See what I'm saying? Like, there's nobody like him. So when I say it's an epic, I don't just mean that it's, you know, thousands of years of story, but that the love story that it contains spans, you know, 1,300 years. The importance of beats and cleanliness are very important parts of the story. There is a god that is featured. It is the only god that is still with us, and that is Pan. And the reason that Pan is still with us is because he is the one who is into debauchery, and that's what we still have in our world. This is one of his novels that features a character that he refers to as the genius waitress. She's working to live, right? Her art isn't paying for her life, which is why she's a waitress. The genius part is in her art. The art that she engages in is what actually gives her life meaning, but what pays for her life is being a waitress. And the genius waitress shows up in at least 3 of his stories. He really, really likes that trope. This also discusses a perfumery that is searching for the perfect smell that can actually help to prolong life, possibly even forever. I devoured this the first time I read it. I have reread all of his books many, many times. And as I was going through this, I realized it's time for me to reread them again. Just to tell you, just a little personal thing. My first holiday season with who would become my husband got me a first edition of my favorite Tom Robbins book. And there he is in all his 80s glory. This came out in 1984. And this is a first edition. And my husband was so funny. He said, I'm so glad that Still Life with Woodpecker isn't your favorite, because I could not have afforded a first edition of that one, which was so cute. But this is definitely my favorite and one of my most prized possessions. I have read this version once, and I won't lend it out. which is why I have the other one, because I have to be able to lend them out to people. Okay, so the very best book by Tom Robbins. Yes, I know I said the last one is my favorite, and I'm saying that this one is the best, and those are two different books. It's just how it goes. This is definitely the best book that he has ever written, but I loved Jitterbug Perfume. Okay, skinny legs and all. The life lessons contained within this novel are crucial to the human existence. And you may think that I'm overstating it, but I disagree. I am not overstating it. Skinny Legs and All is about, as all his books are, many, many things. Okay. There are, I'd say, 3 main plot lines in this book. First, there's a genius waitress, of course. So that's one of the plot lines. Now, her uncle happens to be a overly devout Christian who is in no way Christ-like, who is a minister, I believe, is a reverend. He's a reverend. And he hatches a plan to get the 3rd temple to be built on the Temple Mound. And to do that, he would have to make sure that the Temple Mound is cleared of what now stands there, which is the Dome of the Rock, which is one of, I think, of the two, maybe the most, but certainly one of 2 of the most sacred mosques in the world to those of the Muslim faith. And it was built on the Temple Mound, which is where, if you go back 2,000 years, the first temple and the second temple were built, both destroyed. And then the Dome of the Rock was built. And in Revelations, it says that there's a temple on the Temple Mound when Jesus comes back for Revelations. So her reverend uncle thinks if we can get rid of the Dome of the Rock, then the Jews will build the temple and then Revelations can happen. This is his cockamamie, completely insane plan. Third, the restaurant where she works is owned and operated by a Muslim and a Jew who opened their Middle Eastern restaurant across the street from the UN in New York City, which I know sounds like the beginning of a really bad joke, but it's not. It's actually the storyline. So we have a Muslim and a Jew running a restaurant. The genius waitress is working there, and her uncle is doing this crazy plan that is full of violence and insanity. It also stars 5 objects as fully formed characters: a conch shell, a painted stick, a dirty sock, a dessert spoon, and a can of beans. By the time you get here, you need to know that you're in for some wackiness with Tom Robbins. I wish I could give you better explanations of what these are about, but there's absolutely no way without actually reading them yourself. So the next one is Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. Now, you may have heard of this one because Gus Van Sant, who's a pretty famous director, turned this into a movie. Now, I'm going to butcher the quote, but I'm going to try to quote Robbins when he was interviewed by Jon Stewart, that his movie was one of the only movies in history where all the critics agreed. They all hated it. I liked the movie, but understand that I knew this book inside and out, right? And so the few things they changed made me not so happy, but the things they got right made me so happy. And there was no way you really could have understood what was going on with that movie if you hadn't read this book, unless you were just taking it as like a fever dream and just taking it as like the pictures and words came at you. You just take it in and it means what it means is then probably would have enjoyed it. I don't know. It's pretty wacky. It stars some pretty famous people, actually, that I'm sure you have heard of. It stars Uma Thurman. She plays the main character. And it features Keanu Reeves, John Hurt, Angie Dickinson, Pat Morita, Lorraine Bracco, and Rain Phoenix, who is sister to River and Joaquin. So the character that Uma Thurman plays in the movie is possibly the most, but certainly one of the most interesting main characters it has ever been my pleasure to read. This novel is a sort of feminist trip around the country with a hitchhiker who is gifted beyond measure in the pursuit. You see, Sissy Hangshaw was born with dramatically large thumbs. And due to that, she can command traffic. Now, this has started to get a little dated because, well, a lot dated, because we don't hitchhike anymore. In the 70s and probably the first half of the 80s, they were trying to get people to stop, but hitchhikers were everywhere. It was kind of just a way that the hippies got around, and then the serial killers started being like, oh, there's always these hippies around that I can, so like it became really unsafe, if you sort of look at the history. But this is written at a time when there were definitely still hitchhikers. She knows it's dangerous. It's definitely dangerous, and he talks about how it's dangerous, but it was, you never see hitchhikers anymore. That's just not something that happens. So, or if you do, it's very, very rare. So that little piece of it is kind of dates it. But if you just sort of remind yourself and put yourself in a place where hitchhiking was sort of a way that some people, especially people who lived sort of outside society, got around. But yeah, this one's really fun. And I mean, I think you should read the book first. Obviously, the book is always better, but I did enjoy the movie. I mean, Gus Van Sant makes a really interesting movie. I think his interpretations were cool. There were a couple of things I didn't agree with that I would have done differently, but that's how the world works. Okay, the next one is Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas. I love that title. I think it's freaking hilarious. So Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas. So the most remarkable thing about this book is that it is written entirely in second person. Okay, so it's written in present tense. So it has this like different overall feel about it. So keeping in second person narration, the story is told about you, right? You went here, you did this, you had that for breakfast, your hair looked this way. And in this story, you have just a few days to scramble to get everything together for the stock market trade of your life. But you're a little distracted by a displaced 300-pound psychic, that born-again monkey, the tattooed stranger who has just blown your fuses and mind, all while trying to deal with your extremely unruly hair. That is right from the description on the back, because there's no other better way to describe what goes on in this book. And again, they're all, sort of start with these different strings and then come together, and it's part of this same tapestry that is just beautiful and amazing. Okay. Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates. This was the first one that I was able to buy brand new. Like, this is a first edition, but it's a first edition of his 8th book. So like, a lot of people have this. But, and then I bought it when it could only have the hard copy, right? Here is a later picture of him. This is the one that I saw the most reading his books. Obviously, I didn't get the first edition until well into my adulthood. But this one, like I said, Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates, is incredibly remarkable because we stay with one main character throughout the entire story. You know how I was saying there's different like threads in all the stories? Well, this one's different because we are always with Switters. Switters is fascinating. But along with him, we transverse the globe and visit nearly every continent. I don't think we go to Antarctica, but so the book focuses mostly on contradictions, I think is the best way to put it. Switters is a walking pun intended, you'll understand in a minute. Contradiction. He's a pacifist who carries a gun. He's a CIA agent who hates and distrusts the government. He's in love with both his 17-year-old stepsister and a 46-year-old nun at the same time and with equal intensity. And due to a curse forbidding him to walk on the earth, he lives in a wheelchair, even though his body is fully functional. Yeah, this one, even though you stay with Switters the whole time, he does so much transversing and so much traveling and experiencing all sorts of things that it doesn't feel like you're just with the same character the whole time. It still totally feels like a Tom Robbins book. Okay, his very last novel, Villa Incognito. It's probably the littlest one too. Well, we'll get to those. So Villa Incognito would be the last novel that Robbins would publish. It is widely recognized as his reaction to 9/11. It is that coupled with a look back at the Vietnam War, which he was very affected by. The story centers around three soldiers who've been missing since the war, and two American women who are looking for the men, one of which is her brother. Oh, and of course, he also discusses the Tanukai, which is a badger-like animal who is part deity and can shapeshift. Can you repeat that? The Tanukai. They are badger-like animals that are part deity and can shapeshift. But he's not done publishing because his most recent publications were not novels. The first is Wild Ducks Flying Backwards, which is a collection of essays and articles, which some of them were what he published back in the 60s or 70s when he was still writing, still doing journalism. I think most of them were in magazines of some sort or another. It's a really neat look into his mind and opinions, and not that you're not getting that with all of his novels, you are, but I had such a good time with this, but also I was very starved at the time when it came out for more new Tom Robbins, so I'm going to keep that in mind. And also published an autobiography called Tibetan Peach Pie. I do have a copy, but it's lent out. Forgot to get it back in time for this. Oh, well, I'm sure I'll put a picture of it up. I usually put it on this side. Don't I? Yeah. And then he has also written what he refers to as a children's book for adults. B is for beer. Okay, so the story goes, according to Robbins, they saw a cartoon in the New Yorker. One of those political cartoons, just one frame. And it had a publisher and a writer sitting and drinking a martini and a beer, respectively. Obviously, the publisher's the martini, the writer's the beer. And the caption is, I really don't think a children's book about beer would sell. Well, Robbins took that as a challenge. Hey, Who is this cartoonist to say that a children's book about beer won't sell? So that's what he did. That's what he did. This book explains how beer saved civilization. Sorta. Ish. This is such a fun book. It is, the way that he writes, he takes on very, very adult topics. This, even though he is talking about beer and a little bit of inebriation, it's much more G-rated. Okay, so I want to tell you about it a little more than I've told you about the other ones, because I don't know, because I wanna, and it's my birthday month. So, so cute. So Gracie is 5, but she's going to be 6 next week. And she's very curious. She's very curious about a lot of things, but right now she's kind of curious about that funny drink that her dad and her uncle consume when they watch football. Her uncle is far more interested in the beer than the sports, so when she asks about it, he answers, along with offering her a sip. She thinks it's bitter. Her uncle promises to take her to a beer factory next Monday so that she can see exactly how it's made. She does have a lot of questions, after all. She gets really confused when he says it's made from hops. Not grasshoppers, my dear. Hops, grain, and yeast. But her Uncle Mo meets a lady he really likes, and he leaves town before he can take Gracie to the beer factory. She is so upset and so disappointed, she takes herself to the fridge, opens a can of beer, and downs it. Even though it's really yucky, she opens another, and she drinks that one too. She's 6. So the beer fairy shows up. She needs to explain to her that she's far, far too young to consume beer. But if she really wants to know all about it, the beer fairy will take her on an adventure and answer all of her questions. And that's the story. It's the beer fairy explaining to Gracie what beer is, how it was discovered, why it was discovered, why it was fermented, how it was fermented, and all of, those things. They go on a quest around the world. This fairy can fly around and bring Gracie to fermentation labs and distilleries and breweries and things. And near the end of the story, Gracie sees her mother, and she's drinking a beer because she's upset about Gracie's father. I'm going to interrupt myself because he's so sly about this, because we get the whole story from Gracie, but Gracie doesn't really understand the significance of what she says to us. She says, Daddy's off on another vacation. He always comes back so tired from those. I don't understand. He brings his secretary with him. That should help him with his workload. Excuse me? And then later on when mommy's crying, it's because it's something having to do with the secretary, right? So, and Gracie doesn't get the significance of what she's telling us, but we get the whole story. So anyway, she catches her mother drinking while she's upset. And the little girl explains to her mother that while beer is fine for being silly and funny sometimes, it shouldn't be used to run and hide from our problems. And Gracie's mom wonders how she ever managed to have such an insightful child. Then, in 2018, Ben Lee approached Robbins about turning the children's book into a musical. Ben Lee is an Australian musician and actor. Whether collaborating in one-off projects like The Bends with Ben Foltz and Ben Keller, producing a Grammy Award-winning music comedy album with Margaret Cho Dependent, or simply strumming away on his guitar and putting out over 20 solo albums of songs that have made many romantics swoon for multiple generations. Anyway, Ben's career is always, to quote the song Ache for You, confusing but never dull. Robbins says that Lee reached out about turning his book into a musical, and he thought it was a strange request, but as Robbins put it, strange is my middle name. So Ben Lee would duet with Laura Silverman, that happens to be Sarah Silverman's sister, the comedian, writing this psychedelic children's musical with American literary legend Tom Robbins. Now, it only has a soundtrack. There's only the music from it, but you can get the official soundtrack. And it stars some people you've probably heard of. Like I said, Laura Silverman, I mentioned who she is. John Cryer, you've probably heard of him. Paul F. Tompkins, look him up, you know him. Rose Byrne, you definitely know her. Busy Phillips, Belinda Carlisle, Alex Wise, and the Carey brothers. Now, if you're not my generation, you might not know who Belinda Carlisle is, but otherwise you probably know most of those names, which I think is really super cool. And when you're listening to the opening song and it's like, oh my God, that's John Cryer. That's the coolest thing ever. So the songs that are in it are called, some of the songs that are featured are Everything's Better with Beer, The Crazy Uncle Song, Americans Tie Their Shoes Too Tight, The Essence of Attraction, Liquid Courage, A History of Wonder, and I'm actually going to quote a couple of lines from the History of Wonder. This is directly from the book, and then Ben Lee put it to music, and it goes, "Our accidental, transcendental, And the last song that I want to mention is The Real World, and the Beer Fairy sings, "The real world is deeper than you ever thought, and the ordinary world is just the foam on top. So take one final look before you head out on your way."
The real world is hidden up a trickster's sleeve, and the ordinary world is only make-believe. So have a grand adventure, and we'll meet again someday.
Again, I wish he had been more prolific. I mean, that's my only wish. But I am not going to look a gift novelist in the mouth, and I'm just going to be beyond grateful he wrote down his thoughts and stories and shared them with the world. If you need a break from the dark and disturbing and depraved and depressing, I highly recommend you check out Tom Robbins for some lighter fare, and only lighter in that there aren't really trigger warnings. If you read these and really think about the philosophy behind them, they can be pretty heavy, but again, he's not going to really take it seriously. So it makes for just a really fun ride. And if you are still here, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I would really appreciate a thumbs up. It's really helpful. And if you're not a subscriber, I would really appreciate a sub. It would, it really makes a difference. Other than that, do me a favor, be nice to yourself. You are precious and important, and the only self you're going to get. So, stick around, because tomorrow needs you. I'll catch you next time. Bye. He wasn't the most prolific lighter. Literally reading it. I should have figured out which words to use beforehand. Well, then in 19 shows my age. He called Tibetan horse, and after receiving okay, Eugene